I have to admit from the start that this presentation is going to be a little bit of a promo for the Sex Ed lecture series. I'm okay with that. I hope you're okay with it too, because at the end of the session, I'm going to give out a free code for you to attend a lecture for free. So let me tell you how this got started. When the pandemic started, I thought that there should be a way for sexuality educators to stay connected and to continue learning from each other. And I was fortunate to have taken a course on how to teach sex ed on Zoom back in January and February of 2020. So who knew how useful that would be? I was a little bit ahead of the curve compared to everybody else who was just scrambling to learn this new technology. So the original program was called Sex E-Chats, which I thought was clever. These were promoted mostly over Facebook and Twitter. And on the screen is the first announcement on Facebook. And they were free half-hour sessions where people could gather on the screen in the Brady Bunch video style boxes, and lecturers would come and talk about their sex education research for a half hour. So this is a screenshot from the very first lecture, the kind of image that would become familiar to all of us over the past year. And you may not recall that, or you may or may not recall that the earlier incarnations of Zoom had these icons, these gray icons when a person decided to go off camera. The early days of the Sex E-Chats, as they were called, were informal and they were bumpy. On our third or fourth chat, we had a Zoom bomb where a couple of young men made offensive comments repeatedly, and I had to scramble to figure out how to turn them off and how to get them out of the room. The sessions at that time in the first week and then thereafter as well were very well attended, about 75 per session, sometimes as many as 100. And so it was very hard to figure out how to figure out the controls and how to move someone in and out of the room. I had to close down that particular lecture, apologize profusely to the speaker, and figure out how to control the controls for future lectures. So for the first 3 weeks, I ran the program 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in the evenings, 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, before I realized that I couldn't keep up that pace. It was a lot. It was 3 meetings per week, a lot of coordination, but attendance was so strong, and I very often had sessions, one at 6 p.m. and then a second one at 6:30 because of Zoom's 100 person capacity for the free accounts. Here are the titles of the first sessions that we had, and as you can see, the titles were long, and they were not a very good match for the fun, lighthearted name that I gave the program, Sexy Chats. So after the first week, I retitled it the American Journal of Sexuality Education Lecture Series, since all of the invited speakers were also authors who had published in the journal for which I serve as editor. Mark Schoen, who runs the website Sex Smart Films, graciously agreed to keep the recordings on his website. So a number of those early lectures are still there. And his website has over 600, I think over 650 sex education videos, sex therapy videos. So there's a few sex ed lecture series or sexy chats on that website. So I gradually expanded the scope of the topics. There were only so many articles in the American Journal of Sex Ed and only so much interest among the published authors. And so I gradually expanded the scope of topics and speakers. So it wasn't just the authors who had their work published in the journal, but also members of the journal's advisory board and other invited guests. So here's a few very early examples. Board member Leslie Walker Hirsch discussing her book, The Facts of Life and More. Board member Samira Qureshi, an expert on Muslim sexuality, and 2 speakers from the National Coalition for Sexual Health who had just developed a white paper on COVID-19 and sexual health, Susan Gilbert and Jennifer Rogers. You can find their video on the website for the National Coalition for Sexual Health, and you can find Samira's on the Sex Ed Lecture Series YouTube page. Just Google that and you'll find that. Leslie's was unfortunately not recorded. So I was running the program weekly through the spring and into the summer, And all of the speakers were donating their time, and so was I. And I was very often running 2 sessions every Wednesday night after that first week or two when I did 3 nights. I wanted to begin compensating the speakers and also compensating myself. And I also wanted to get a professional Zoom account and pay for American Sign Language interpreters when we needed them. So I surveyed the audience to find out what kind of pricing was both fair and manageable. And I did some budget planning to reconcile being able to cover my expenses, including marketing and paying people to moderate the lectures and other website development and other business expenses. And while I wanted to compensate the speakers and myself and pay expenses, I also wanted to be mindful that we were in a pandemic. So people were losing their jobs and dealing with health issues, with expensive costs. And even if we didn't have these types of crises, I still wanted it to be affordable for students and people with low income. So after considering responses to a survey on pricing, I set the regular fee at $25 per lecture, and I created a sliding scale program. The sliding scale program has been used by hundreds of individuals, and most people choose the $5 option, but some people do choose the other options. No one has ever been turned away when requesting the sliding scale program. It's not the kind of thing that I want to spend any time policing. I feel that if a person is requesting assistance, then they need assistance. It's not for me to judge. I do feel strongly that that folks should pay something, which is why I set the basement fee at $5, which I think communicates a minimal level of skin in the game, as well as respect for the time of the speakers and the moderators, the interpreters, and myself. I also knew that folks needed continuing education credits, and so I worked out a contract with the Tennessee Alliance for Sexual Health to process ASECT credits. They are an institutional provider of ASECT credits, and then I later applied for and was approved for CFLE credits by the National Council for Family Relations. In order to be eligible for continuing education credits, I had to make the lectures 1 hour long, which was probably better anyway for the speakers, as they often had many things to say and the audience always had lots of questions. The paid program launched July 1st, and Deborah Rothman was the first speaker talking about parents talking to children about sex. And the lectures continued through the summer, and I tried to keep a balance of journal published authors and other topics that I thought would be of interest to audience who teach people of all ages. So here are some of the sessions that took place in July and August, and you can see this gradual transition. You can kind of tell which is which. There's the long titles, Motivations Against Sex and Number of Sexual Partners, a 2-study replication and extension. It's very clearly related to something that was published in the journal, versus toys, accessories, and beyond. That's something that was an invited speaker, where I decided, let's get folks, let's expand the scope of what we're talking about and appeal to different topics and different things that may be of interest to the audience. So there's quite a blend here. Here is the September schedule, and yep, that's me in a Star Trek uniform. I had become friends with the spokesperson of the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, Susan Wright, who just happens to be the author of 9 Star Trek novels. So I totally geeked out when I met her, and we agreed that we just had to create a program for teaching sex ed for Star Trek fans. And then some other topics. We had a session on September 2nd, specifically celebrating World Sexual Health Day, and a session on puberty education by Wendy Sellers, an author of The Wonder Years, a puberty education series. James Wadley talking about leading conversations in sex ed, and Stephanie Middleman talking about autism. So these are the October lectures, and so there was less reliance on the journal. There were 2 sessions that were based on material that was published in the journal, the porn literacy lecture, some fabulous research, by the way. And if you ever have the chance to watch a TED Talk session by Emily Rothman, I highly recommend it. The quasi-experimental evaluation of the grassroots program was very clearly an article from the journal. But then I reached out to Rochelle Furbata, who did a session on sex ed for folks with intellectual disabilities, and Angel Russell spoke about moving sex ed beyond the binary. So this was a program that was continuing to evolve beyond the journal focus. So I rebranded it the Sex Ed Lecture Series, and I left off the American Journal of Sex Ed. So then I had to choose a logo. And so I went to the website 99 Designs, and I had over 100 artists compete to submit a logo. And so here are some of the logos that we were considering. I had participants vote. I had friends and family and colleagues all weigh in. And then my mom made the final decision. I left the final decision to my mom. So if you like our logo, that's mom's doing. And if you don't like the logo, then you have to take it up with mom. And then we continued into November, which I think was the first month where all three speakers, we took off the week of Thanksgiving, all three speakers were invited speakers. That was a first. And I was also hearing from a lot of people who wanted to be speakers. A lot of people were contacting me. So I set up a proposal form and I invited engaged participants to serve as peer reviewers to help select future lectures. And that's the web link, the bit.ly/sexedproposal. And here is a part of the reviewer form, and it's a very, very simple form. There's space for reviewers to give a rating. There's a space for comments. There's also questions about how the topic relates to sex education. I didn't want it to be just about, everything related to sexuality, but I wanted everything to be relevant for sex education. So just because it's in the sphere of sexuality, I really want to keep engaging people who teach sex ed and speak to their unique needs, not necessarily folks who do therapy or counseling or research, but sex education. And then I also ask questions about how the speaker will address elements of inclusivity and diversity. Ultimately, I wanted to know what the audience thought of the proposals. That's why I did this peer review. Was it something that they would find useful and want to spend their time watching? Is it a quality program? Are the objectives clear? If the peer reviewers are happy with it, then it gets through. And I share critical feedback with everyone who submits a proposal. And while the peer review process is a blind process, I also keep an eye on diversity. I can see who all the speakers are, and I keep an eye on diversity, equity, inclusion in making the final decision. And I also actively seek out people from underrepresented communities and invite them to be speakers. We occasionally have a networking session, and these are free. We did one in January and we did another one in April, so we're due for another one. Folks love these sessions since they don't have to pay anything and they get to spend an hour networking face-to-face with colleagues from all over the world, colleagues who teach sex education, and they share strategies that they love, new ideas that they've come up with, and they just network and make new connections, and we keep spreadsheets so that people can stay in touch. So people really do like those sessions. I've also used the space to celebrate the ASECT award winners, which was a free session. So we invited all of the ASECT award winners and spent an evening celebrating them. We also have a YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and just look up Sex Ed Lecture Series, you can find it. And on the bottom, there's a few sample lectures that are available for free. We also record all of the lectures and edit all of the lectures. I do spend quite a bit of time on my weekends editing out long pauses, people saying I'm famous for saying a lot, but most people do. And so I try to clean up that so that people are represented at their best. And the recorded sessions are on a restricted portion of the YouTube channel, so they are available for the same $25 fee. They're also available through the sliding scale program, so folks can pay $5 for that if they need to. And the income is for all of the recordings is split evenly with the speakers. So finally, I have some free stuff for you. So first, please visit our website, sexedlectures.org. Choose any lecture that you'd like to attend. The calendar is up through August. So you can choose a live session or you can choose a recording and enter the code GCAP. And this will give you access to a free lecture. This is one per person and the code will work through the end of May. And here are 2 free recorded lectures. You want to take a screenshot or scribble down these links, please feel free to do so. They will take you directly to the recording. We have one recording by Catherine McLaughlin, who discusses sexuality and developmental disabilities, and Alicia Andrews and Lolita Smith Moore discussing sex-positive teachable moments in hip-hop from the 99 to the 2000s. People love those. Okay, so here's a quick look at what our website looks like right now. And so this is the main page of the website. And so it has lectures that are coming up tonight and next week. And then you can't see it, but on the bottom of the page, there's a link to access the full calendar. There's also a link for the sliding scale program. There's links for ASECT and CFLE credits and other good stuff. If you go to sexedlectures.org, you can get all of the details of the upcoming session. And so here is the link for our sliding scale program. This is the, it's on the website, but this is also the direct link, the bit.ly/sexed sliding scale. I think it's case sensitive, so be sure if you're taking a photo of that, or watching or pausing to take it down, be sure that you capitalize where you need to. And lastly, there's a few people that I want to acknowledge. So Tanya Bass has been our regular moderator. She's a friend and colleague of mine, and she also serves as an occasional host. Samira Qureshi has been an occasional moderator and host as well. Jeffrey Anthony and Alicia Andrews have also served as moderators. Nancy Daly Moore built the website, and Emmy Kanahuati processes the ASEC CEs for TANASH, or the Tennessee Alliance for Sexual Health. And by the way, go to their website as well. I think it's tanash.org, I'm not sure, but Google them and look them up because they also have a weekly webinar program on Wednesday. Theirs is in the afternoon. So you can see what they have on the schedule in the afternoon and then come visit us in the evening. And finally, these are our speakers. So we have had 101 speakers so far, and this includes what's on the calendar through August. And we have a couple additional ones that are in peer review right now. These topics vary greatly. The speakers speak on topics ranging on everything from talking to young children about sex ed to talking with adults or older adults, talking about BDSM, talking about topics that are of very narrow interests. Like, for example, we had one speaker who spoke about the sexual health of college students in the United Kingdom, which I guess is not so narrow if you live in the United Kingdom, but most of our guests are from the United States. If the topic passes peer review or if it was published in the journal, then the journal authors get an automatic pass. But if it goes through peer review, then people are interested in it and folks get an invitation. And again, I do some outreach as well, always toward expanding our DEI lens. We've had many, many speakers on topics related to intellectual and developmental disabilities, which is fantastic, and show that that's actually where I did some of my earliest work in the field, working in group homes and community programs for folks with intellectual disabilities. And so it's great to see that there's a lot of movement and interest in addressing this underserved community of people. So here are some of our more speakers, and I'm sorry that the text is so small. There's 100 people that I wanted to list, so there's there's a lot of people here. There's another one, and you can see that folks are from all over the place. They're from community-based programs. They work independently. They work at universities and nonprofits. So all kinds of folks.
I'm just listening, and maybe I missed this. Is it going through the evidence-based process?
No, well, I mean, some of the selection of the lectures are not evidence-based. There are certainly speakers who have had their programs evaluated at various levels of rigor. There are speakers who have a great deal of knowledge, but have not necessarily had their work researched. So it's kind of all over the map, but it's not a prerequisite. And if I may speak to the issue of evidence-based programs, I actually have a bit of a bugaboo about that. I think that our prioritization of evidence-based programs and this is not to criticize folks who are doing this important work. I think it's important, but I also think that it is kind of hijacked the meaning of what sex education is to zero in on one very narrow element of sex education, which is teen pregnancy prevention or STI prevention. And the reality is that there's many other things that we need to talk about related to sexuality education that these programs don't necessarily capture. There's another concern that I have, which is that I think that these programs sometimes, not always, sometimes prey on communities of color and perpetuate a notion that folks of color are implicitly at risk. And I think we need to move away from that, and we need to talk about strength-based programming, and we need to talk more about pleasure. And these are things that the programs are not necessarily capturing. We did have Lisa Lieberman and Eva Goldfarb from Montclair State University speak about a month ago. They have done groundbreaking research on what the potential of what truly comprehensive sex education program can do in terms of addressing violence prevention and changing attitudes and norms and safety issues related to sexual orientation. And, so there's new evidence that provide a lens that we may not have considered before when it comes to what is to be valued in sex education. And I just think that we need to be doing more than pregnancy prevention, which is important, but just a sliver of what we're doing. Thanks for the question, Angel.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any other last thoughts, just in general?
Please come to the program, use the link or use the code, go to sexedlectures.org and type in GCAP, and that should get you a free lecture. And see if you like the program, and then if you do, we'll see you on Wednesday evenings.
Thank you so much, Bill. Do you have access to the chat where you can maybe put your email if people have questions?
Absolutely, yeah. So
okay, that would be very helpful. Thank you, Bill.
Sure, my pleasure. There we go. All right. Well, have a great rest of the conference, and thanks again, Angel, for moderating here, and to everybody at GCAP for having this great program.
Again, I'm sure you'll be hearing from Alex soon.
Okay. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.